Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
They've let me have the mic. Look out. Louisa and I are going to be leading the team today. So I am your host today, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action, and fueling the grassroots community across Virginia and coast to coast. Now, if you're not from Virginia, you may not be familiar with the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. They basically lead us through the legislative priorities for the grassroots each and every year. Check out their website to get all of the profiles and summaries of the important legislation. It's a one-stop shop to know what the grassroots in Virginia is standing for today for this session in the General Assembly, which is our state legislature. Before we get started with Louisa, I just want to remind you of the rules of the road. We are a friendly community, but if you act up, we're going to kick you out. That's the Virginia way. We are live. This is Friday, January 16th, and this is Season 6, Episode 2, the Virginia Grassroots Coalition Press Conference. And I am going to pitch it over to my friend Louisa right now.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And it is just so great to be with everyone and just see everyone introducing themselves in the chat from all across the state. And I think what is so fantastic about the coalition, which was founded in 2017, is now we do have grassroots membership from all over Virginia. So when we are advocating in the legislative session, we've got folks who can talk to all of our legislators in all of our districts. So you're going to be hearing about priorities that we have for this session, and we really hope that this gives you the excitement and the energy and also some direction on how to get involved. So again, thank you all for participating in the Virginia Grassroots Coalition's press conference today. As I mentioned, the coalition now includes more than 65 grassroots groups and represents tens of thousands of Virginia voters from around the states. Our members work in issue groups to help draft, review, and prioritize legislative bills that we advocate for throughout the General Assembly session. And this is a lot of work, you guys, because typically we're having upwards of 2,000 plus bills that are introduced. So we are spending that time trying to figure out what are priorities that we want to make sure get the energy of our grassroots activists behind them to push them through to Governor Spanberger's desk this year. So we ask you to help us by joining one of our issue working groups, advising your legislators to support our priorities, and providing written comments and oral testimony when priority bills are considered. As I introduce our issue group leads, we will make sure that their contact information is shared in the chat so you can join their efforts. This year, the Virginia General Assembly will also be debating and voting on a 2-year budget. Like many, the coalition is concerned about the significant budget cuts and expensive regulatory requirements being implemented at the federal level. We understand the urgent need to ensure funding and access to health, food security, education, and childcare programs for all Virginians. The coalition will advocate for new sources of revenue that help mitigate shortfalls in these programs and help ensure that the legislative priorities we're sharing with you today can be pursued. We believe that Virginia should focus on measures which make our tax system more progressive, namely imposing higher tax rates on individuals and corporations with higher income and wealth. Such an approach would take everyone's ability to pay into account and maintain Governor Spanberger's emphasis on affordability. We have a great opportunity to make important changes in Virginia this year, and our advocacy is needed now more than ever, especially because we have so many great new delegates who are joining us in the House of Delegates this year and are going to be carrying some of these really great bills. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to get behind those 13 folks who are really sticking their necks out there to try and make Virginia the best it can for everyone who lives here. I'm now going to turn it over to our issue working group leaders and legislators to tell you more about specific legislation. As they're speaking, please put any questions you have in the chat and we'll address them during Q&A or during the after chat. We're going to kick it off with an inspirational video from Delegate Sia Price to give us an update on day 1 in Richmond.
Hey y'all, so it was a really long day, but I just wanted to get back to you and let you know we were able to pass out all for proposed constitutional amendments that will let the voters decide their freedoms and their future, as those referendums will come to you in April and November. I know there will be lots of questions. I know that today was a long day, but it was an exciting day. It was a historic day, and we were literally able to deliver on work that started way before I got here. I mean, this has been generational work for the right to vote, to protect our bodily autonomy, for the right to love and marry, and now to fight back, fight fire with fire so that we can protect our democracy. So I'm a little tired, but it was only the first day. So we have 59 more days of exciting fun to follow. So some of the other committees are going to have their first committee meetings tomorrow. So you can tune in to that link anytime to catch up on what we're doing in the House and our subcommittees, our committees, or on the floor. If you ever have any questions, let us know. And we do have a special surprise. We're going to get something going back again tomorrow. So we look forward to it, but just wanted to send this quick update. Long day, historic day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your encouragement. This is why we do what we do, to make positive changes for working Virginians, everyday Virginians, you and me, and those that need it most. So we will talk to you soon. Have a good night.
Amazing. Well, if that doesn't get you fired up and excited about session, I don't know what does. But I would like to introduce our first speaker, Sheba Williams, who's Executive Director of No Left Turns, to tell us a little bit more about where we are in the process of approving the constitutional amendments today, because we've got some new updates. Sheba, tell us what's going on.
Hey y'all, I am Sheba Williams. I am the Executive Director of No Left Turns. We are lead on the Right to Vote Coalition in Virginia, but I will be covering all four constitutional amendments. Four constitutional amendments in a year is crazy. But on day one of session, we were able to pass all four constitutional amendments in a marathon session. There was a press conference at 10:30. At 1 o'clock, there was the subcommittee meeting for privileges and elections. About 3:30, there was a Senate subcommittee privileges and elections meeting. And then about 6 p.m., it went to the floor for the House vote. HJ1 and HJ1, HJ2, HJ3, and HJ4, which are right to marry, right to vote, right to reproductive freedom, and our redistricting constitutional amendments were all engrossed and passed through the House. Probably about 10 minutes ago, Senate passed their version of SJ 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the Senate floor. So these constitutional amendments will go to the voters. Redistricting
Amazing. Also, probably the most efficient we've ever seen the General Assembly work, which is it's possible, which is great.
We
But
are
she,
used to long days, but that what we have. I cannot remember doing all of the committee meetings in one day and getting the things done. Because House suspended their rules, they were able to get it all done on day one of session. Senate did the 3-day rule, so they had to do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it just passed on the Senate floor a few minutes ago. This is history. We have been working on these constitutional amendments for decades. It has been 124 years since felony disenfranchisement has been in our Constitution. The need to pass the right to marry, not the Dobbs case, but the Loving case, says that same-sex couples can marry who you choose to marry, but it has been a stain that's been procedurally in our Constitution for a few years that we want to get rid of. The right to reproductive freedom is a direct response to the Dobbs decision to make sure that Virginia protects their access to health care. In the South, we are one of the only states in the South below the Mason-Dixon line that still has abortion access, but it's so much more than abortion. There's testing for cancer, there's thyroid testing, there's making sure that there's different means to healthcare for women and families who need it. That includes birth control. That includes making sure that people do not die from not having access to healthcare. We have people who travel to our state for those protections as we see them thwarted all around the country. And finally, my hard work, restoration of rights. Our organization sued the previous administration, that is outgoing Youngkin's administration, for changing the restoration of rights process in April of 2023. And Judge Gibney in federal court sided with the administration and said, and I quote, even though Youngkin is acting in a king-like manner, he has the authority to make decisions about the voting process how he sees fit. And this is why we have fought for this constitutional amendment for over a decade. The power to decide who gets the right to vote and who has access to the ballot box should not lie in one person's hand. And it needs to be said that even though Youngkin perverted the process and leaned towards justice in a different way, we have been fighting for this constitutional amendment when Northam, when McCullough, and when McDonald were leaning towards making sure that people had access, because we never believed that it should be up to one person's discretion. So we're making history.
Ugh.
We need you all to show up to vote in April and November to vote yes for our constitutional amendments. But right now, in the moment, we still have enabling language that needs to be voted on and supported. That includes, like, and what enabling language is, for those who are not familiar, it just makes sure that there's concrete, airtight specifics about the language that goes on the ballot so that people understand it, and make sure that we are able to clearly put in our Constitution exactly what changes for people's rights to reproductive freedom, to the right to marry, and the right to vote, and the redistricting thing. I think a lot of people have questions about redistricting. We've seen things in Texas and other states, North Carolina, South Carolina, that are aiming to take direction from the Trump administration to stack the deck in the congressional races to make sure that Republicans are able to be voted in. This is an attempt, and it is only a trigger if something happens in the state of Virginia that requires gerrymandering to try to stack our ballots with Republicans. It is not a overhaul of the 2021 committee that did not did gerrymandering, but did the constitutional maps. It is a very specific trigger that puts protections in place for Virginia's process. So it's important for people to know that. So we
Shiva,
have.
I'm going to say thank you, because we're going to have to move on to our
Go ahead,
other
go. Thank
folks.
you.
But we will, if people have questions about the constitutional amendments, we'll talk about it in the Q&A and after chat. The last thing I want to note is you are going to be an important part of this process, everyone, because you have to help us educate other folks in Virginia about these amendments. Not just that they need to vote, but make sure they understand what's on the ballot, because I'm sure folks can remember having confusing ballot language before for other constitutional amendments and people not really understanding what they were voting on. So this is going to be our call to action for the grassroots. Help us communicate, help us educate, and we will come back and share materials with you so that it'll make it easy to do so. But Shiva, I just want to say congratulations. I know how much you've poured into this work, and I am just so thrilled for you and for everybody in your coalition who have just, it's been decades, and I'm so excited that we have gotten this far.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move us on to our next topic, and I'd like to introduce Paul Weiss, who is co-lead of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition's new immigration working group. And Paul, I'm going to give it to you to tell us what can we expect for legislation, or what are we hoping for this year?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Louisa. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here. Our working group on protecting immigrant rights, we have 4 policy priorities that we're supporting this year in the General Assembly. And first, I want to give a shout out to our group. This is a brand new group, and we coalesced together this fall, and we have the challenge of working with brand new legislation. Some of it isn't even out yet, but we've been consulting with ally groups like VACIR, Virginia Coalition on Immigrant Rights, CASA Virginia, as well as different delegates and senators in the General Assembly to help us come up with these priorities. So I'm just going to start. As I said, they have not appeared in numbered bills yet, not all of them, but we do anticipate them soon. And these policies, they're neither bold nor rash. nor are they controversial. So these should be slam dunks. None of them prevent law enforcement from performing their duties in legally investigating violations of criminal and civil law. They simply return dignity and humanity to all Virginia residents, and they make our communities safer, and they rid us of unnecessary and unsafe federal interference. I'm going to go through them succinctly, but they do require some explanation just because they are brand new policies that a lot of us probably haven't heard. So the first priority we support is requiring judicial rather than administrative warrants for arrests and searches. So what does that mean? ICE uses administrative warrants to arrest and terrorize people. And that's dangerous because they're not issued by a judge. They're signed by ICE officials themselves, meaning there is no neutral review and no finding of probable cause. This, of course, undermines the Fourth Amendment, which exists to protect everyone from unreasonable searches and seizures. Our second priority we support is outlined in House Bill 650. So we do have a bill out there for that, with Katrina Carlson as patron. And this bill protects people from being arrested in Virginia's courts. We heard those awful stories from Charlottesville and Chesterfield County, where people were just showing up to court and being arrested by ICE. When ICE does this, it scares away victims and witnesses. This makes communities less safe, of course, not more safe. It also interferes with due process by punishing people for obeying court orders and appearing as required. Law enforcement should not encourage participation in should encourage participation in legal system, not turn courthouses into traps. We also hope, in addition to this, to see bills that protect other sensitive areas, such as schools, hospitals, food banks, and more. So we're looking forward to seeing that. Our third priority we support is ending 287G agreements and other agreements, which basically deputize local law enforcement to help ICE. 287G agreements turn local police into federal immigration agents, which breaks the trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve. When people fear that calling the police could lead to deportation and harassment, what do? They stop reporting crimes and they stop cooperating as witnesses. Instead of focusing on serious crime, police resources, local police resources are diverted toward immigration enforcement, which is a federal responsibility. Finally, we support the end of masking by law enforcement, and there is a bill for that, Bill HB 7, with Michael Jones as chief patron, and that bill has 19 other co-patrons so far. And we also support requiring visible ID for all immigration agents. ICE officers wearing masks, of course, undermines accountability and public trust. Law enforcement is given significant power by the public. And, our governor has a law enforcement background and we respect that. But with that power comes the responsibility to be identifiable. Masks make it impossible for communities to know who is acting in their name, to report misconduct, or to seek justice when rights are violated. Just an anticipated argument for this, there is an argument based on the supremacy clause that says that states cannot regulate the action of federal agents. They argue that the national government cannot be made to tolerate, quote, undue interference from states in the enforcement of federal law. But we believe, our group, that unmasking ICE and requiring ID of federal immigration agents doesn't interfere with their work. Furthermore, we believe that the Commonwealth's duty in Virginia is to protect its residents, and that supersedes the supposed necessity of federal immigration agents to wear masks and not show ID. Awesome. Virginia is yes, I'm sorry, Louisa.
So, Paul, we've got about 30 seconds left. So I just want to quickly ask you,
yes.
So are these bills that you're talking about, have these been passed in other states? And also, one of the questions we keep hearing for this year is, do these policies cost money?
Right. So there are several states that have already passed these. And so one of the reasons why some of these bills haven't been out yet is the legislators are being very careful about the drafting language and making sure that the president's precedents are out there. But basically, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, among New Jersey, Oregon, many states have already passed these and successfully enacted them. And the answer is no, these do not cost money. Actually, what we're doing to immigrants in this country is actually costing money. Undocumented immigrants accounted for over $690 million in tax revenue. Immigrants pay taxes, and persecuting them and making them go away is not the way to, obviously for humane reasons, but also for revenue reasons, it is costing Virginia money.
Thank you so much. And I just appreciate all of the work you've been doing to stand up our new working group. And we look forward to getting these calls to action and getting in touch with our legislators to support these bills. So thank you so much, Paul. Hey, everyone, we're going to move on to introduce our next speaker, Marie Ann Lyko, who is the leader of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition's Advocates for Women and Families Working Group. Marie Ann, tell us what's going on in your issue areas.
Yeah, thank you, Louisa, and thank you everyone for joining. This is going to be a great year for advocating for women and families. Our group supports legislation that supports the welfare of families and the safety of women. So what goes on in the General Assembly is really important to us. And there is no one who has worked harder to pass laws to help women and families than Senator Boysko. While Senator Boysko has sponsored the constitutional amendment promoting reproductive health care freedom, there is also a bill introduced guaranteeing the right to obtain contraception and another bill for health care coverage for contraceptives and contraceptive devices. But the most exciting part of this year's legislation is that there are so many bills to help make affordability for families. Affordability is the focus of Governor-elect Spanberger's administration, which is something that our group has been advocating in previous administrations, namely affordable childcare, affordable health care, and affordable housing. So for childcare, there is a bill for a child tax credit. For healthcare, there is a bill to create a drug affordability board to review drug prices so that life-saving drugs are not out of reach of a family's budget. For housing, there is a bill that will allow churches and nonprofits to build affordable housing on the land that they own. And there are several bills to protect renters from being charged extraneous fees for the repairs of their rental unit. And this on top of increasing the minimum wage to $15 per hour. So this is going to be a very productive year to benefit all families in Virginia. And I can put the information about these legislative bills that I have in the chat. So if you'd like to support them, please do, and contact your senator and delegate to support these bills. Thanks, Louisa.
Thank you, Marie Ann. And we've got a lovely video from Senator Boysko, so let's get that rolling. So again, thank you all for participating in the Virginia Grassroots Coalition's press conference today. As I mentioned, the coalition now includes more than 65 grassroots groups and represents tens of thousands of Virginia voters from around the states. Our members work in issue groups to help draft, review, and prioritize legislative bills that we advocate for throughout the General Assembly session. And this is a lot of work, you guys, because typically we're having upwards of 2,000 plus bills that are introduced. So we are spending that time trying to figure out what are priorities that we want to make sure get the energy of our grassroots activists behind them to push them through to Governor Spanberger's desk this year. So we ask you to help us by joining one of our issue working groups, advising your legislators to support our priorities, and providing written comments and oral testimony when priority bills are considered. As I introduce our issue group leads, we will make sure that their contact information is shared in the chat so you can join their efforts. This year, the Virginia General Assembly will also be debating and voting on a 2-year budget. Like many, the coalition is concerned about the significant budget cuts and expensive regulatory requirements being implemented at the federal level. We understand the urgent need to ensure funding and access to health, food security, education, and childcare programs for all Virginians. The coalition will advocate for new sources of revenue that help mitigate shortfalls in these programs and help ensure that the legislative priorities we're sharing with you today can be pursued. We believe that Virginia should focus on measures which make our tax system more progressive, namely imposing higher tax rates on individuals and corporations with higher income and wealth. Such an approach would take everyone's ability to pay into account and maintain Governor Spanberger's emphasis on affordability. We have a great opportunity to make important changes in Virginia this year, and our advocacy is needed now more than ever, especially because we have so many great new delegates who are joining us in the House of Delegates this year and are going to be carrying some of these really great bills. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to get behind those 13 folks who are really sticking their necks out there to try and make Virginia the best it can for everyone who lives here. I'm now going to turn it over to our issue working group leaders and legislators to tell you more about specific legislation. As they're speaking, please put any questions you have in the chat and we'll address them during Q&A or during the after chat. We're going to kick it off with an inspirational video from Delegate Sia Price to give us an update on day one in Richmond. And we're going to move on to introduce our next speaker, Marie Ann Lyko, who is the leader of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition's Advocates for Women and Families Working Group. Marie Ann, tell us what's going on in your issue areas.
Yeah, thank you, Louisa, and thank you everyone for joining. This is going to be a great year for advocating for women and families. Our group supports legislation that supports the welfare of families and the safety of women. So what goes on in the General Assembly is really important to us. And there is no one who has worked harder to pass laws to help women and families than Senator Boysko. While Senator Boysko has sponsored the constitutional amendment promoting reproductive health care freedom, there is also a bill introduced guaranteeing the right to obtain contraception and another bill for health care coverage for contraceptives and contraceptive devices. But the most exciting part of this year's legislation is that there are so many bills to help make affordability for families. Affordability is the focus of Governor-elect Spanberger's administration, which is something that our group has been advocating in previous administrations, namely affordable childcare, affordable health care, and affordable housing. So for childcare, there is a bill for a child tax credit. For healthcare, there is a bill to create a drug affordability board to review drug prices so that life-saving drugs are not out of reach of a family's budget. For housing, there is a bill that will allow churches and nonprofits to build affordable housing on the land that they own. And there are several bills to protect renters from being charged extraneous fees for the repairs of their rental unit. And this on top of increasing the minimum wage to $15 per hour. So this is going to be a very productive year to benefit all families in Virginia. And I can put the information about these legislative bills that I have in the chat. So if you'd like to support them, please do, and contact your senator and delegate to support these bills. Thanks, Louisa.
Thank you, Marie Ann. And we've got a lovely video from Senator Boysko, so let's get that rolling.
Hey, Network Nova, it's good to see you all. We are kicking things off in Richmond with a bang. As you know, we went into session on Wednesday where we considered the constitutional amendments. I am the chief patron of SJ1, which is the Reproductive Freedom Constitutional Amendment that will protect our ability to make decisions for ourselves about the whole scope of reproductive health care in Virginia. And I expect that we will have great news for you by the end of the day, today on Friday, about the status of that legislation. You know that it will be the public who will get the last say on this, and it should be in front of the voters of Virginia next fall for a referendum. I have a couple of other things that I'm really excited about. Paid family and medical leave. When you or your loved one are very seriously ill, when you're bringing a baby home to bond with it, or you're caring for your mom or dad at the end of their life, we want you to have the grace and the dignity not to have to choose between your loved one and your job. And so I'm the patron of SB2, which is the Paid Family Medical Leave Bill, working with my very good friend Brianna Sewell in the House of Delegates. This is the 8th year I've carried it. We've been working with the national experts who've done this all around the country, and I'm looking forward to seeing Governor Abigail Spanberger sign it in this spring. Another thing that I've worked on for many years, actually I've worked on this longer than anything else, has been around equal pay for equal work. When you go for a job, if you've been someone who makes $18,000 negotiating a budget of $100 billion, you shouldn't be precluded from having the same salary as somebody who has 30 years in the industry if you've got the same qualifications and skills. And so my bill, which we have not filed at the time of this recording, will say that when you go for a job interview, you don't give them your salary history if you don't want to. You will be judged on the basis of your credentials, and the businesses should be providing a wage salary range so that you know going in what the salary may, would likely be. Those are things that have been shown to help reduce the wage gap, which we know still is alive and well in 2026, despite the fact that in 1974 they passed the Equal Pay Act in Virginia. So the final thing that I want to just raise your attention to is gun violence prevention. We know that children are killed by guns. It is the #1 killer of children in our country and in Virginia. I've been working on this for many years as well, and you know the drill. Lock up your guns when there are children or prohibited people in your home. It's a simple bill. It's been passed 3 times and vetoed by the outgoing governor. I'm looking forward to getting that passed again. But you all are the key to so much of what we do. You show up, you speak out, you help us organize. I'm so grateful for everything that Network Nova does. I can't wait to see you in person, and I'm sending you all the love and kindness. Additionally, I just want to add one more thing. You know that the Walk for Peace, the monks are coming from Texas all the way to DC. I've been talking with them. We are planning an event right around the very 1st of February. Stay tuned for more information. It's going to be exciting to be able to listen to them directly. I'm sure you're following them on social media, but I could be, so excited about it, and hope that everybody will either come here to Richmond for that or be in DC. But thank you for what you do. I love you guys. You are the best, and I send you all the best.
Wonderful. Well, as you can see, we have some really fantastic working relationships with our legislators. And I think, one thing I take away from that video from Senator Boysko is just some of this legislation takes a really long time to get passed. And I just want to, I think it's important to have the expectation that we don't always get the chance to move legislation quickly. And that's why our support of our legislators over the course of years to have their backs, to continue to know that we are out there and advocating with them for these bills is so critical. So I am also noting lots of questions are coming in the chat. So if you see them and you can answer them in the chat, please feel free to do so. And otherwise, we will get to them at the end of this segment. We're moving on now to criminal justice reform, and I'd like to introduce Rob Poggenclass, Executive Director of Justice Forward Virginia, to tell us what to expect this year. Rob, over to you.
Well, thanks, Louisa. So happy to be here and be part of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition, which is driving so much change in our state house and throughout Virginia. So we're excited to have a governor-elect that we can work with. The last 4 years, the General Assembly has passed a lot of good criminal justice reform legislation. Unfortunately, the outgoing governor, I liked how Senator Boysko said that, Um, he used his veto pen more often than I think any governor in history, and a lot of that was on criminal justice reform bills. That is, some of that legislation is some of the most common sense stuff you can imagine. Not controversial bills, trying to bring Virginia's criminal legal system into the 21st century, with evidence-informed practices and procedures that reflect people's values who live here. Criminal justice reform does so much to prevent harm to people, to their families, to their communities. We're trying to decriminalize race and poverty, mental health, substance use, disabilities, and that's what our legislation aims to do. So you can see our priority bills on the Virginia Grassroots Coalition website, but I won't go through all of them. I do want to mention one in particular, which is near and dear to our hearts, which is eliminating mandatory minimum sentences. So much harm is caused by mandatory minimum sentences. This is when the General Assembly passes a law that says a judge must sentence someone to a set amount of prison time, no matter what the facts and circumstances of the case are. Eliminating mandatory minimum sentences, we're not eliminating the maximum punishment that a judge can give. We're simply saying the judge can determine what the minimum sentence should be based on the facts and circumstances of that individual and that particular case. Mandatory minimum sentences do so much harm. They result in unjust sentences across the state. Just yesterday at our lobby day, we had over 100 people register for our lobby day and over 80 appointments. So many good conversations yesterday with lawmakers. And one of the stories was about a man who's currently serving a 33-year sentence for having an unloaded BB gun involved in a crime. The judge had no option but to sentence him to 33 years for a first-time offense. That sentence never would have happened except for mandatory minimums, and there are so many others like that serving time in Virginia prisons right now. We could do this in 2026, and Governor Spanberger could become the first governor in the country to sign a repeal of all mandatory minimum sentences, which would be a heck of a legacy.
Wow, Rob, that gave me chills. And one, thank you for being with us after what I'm assuming was an incredibly busy lobby day yesterday. But just tell me a little bit more, like, how does eliminating mandatory minimum sentences connect with the governor-elect's affordability agenda?
It really does. We spend $55,000 a year to put people in our Department of Corrections. That's per person per year, $55,000. We know that mandatory minimum sentences result in people serving a lot more time than they otherwise would if a judge could simply impose a sentence that really relates to the facts and circumstances of their case. But because, again, mandatory minimum sentences tie the hands of judges by telling them what it is they have to sentence a person to, then people are spending many more years in prison than would otherwise be necessary. So the Department of Corrections has a budget of over $1.5 billion. We could close some prisons. We could get people back home to their families and their communities. So much value, so much human life, so much money could be saved by just returning people to their communities.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. And we will make sure to send out these calls to action so folks can weigh in and help support. I know a number of the bills that you guys are supporting have been out there already. So I think that means this year we have a really good chance because folks have already seen them, and we just need to get those votes in one more time so that they can get to the governor's desk. So thank you for your leadership on this, Rob. And we are rooting for you and for this work to finally get a chance to move forward.
Thanks.
All right, we are going to move on to our next topic of climate and clean energy. And I'd like to introduce Sharon Shetler, who's the co-lead of Virginia Grassroots Coalition's Climate and Clean Energy Working Group. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us.
It's so great to be here. And I want to highlight one of our critical priority areas today, data centers. Virginia is the global epicenter of data centers. And that's right, I'm very clear about this. We are the global epicenter. And the recent explosive growth comes from AI, which is pushing the electric system towards an affordability in a climate crisis. A single AI data center campus can consume the same amount of energy as a small city. This places enormous pressure on utilities. These utilities are also profit-based to build new power plants, transmission lines, substations, and without guardrails. And let me tell you, in Virginia, we have zero guardrails. Without guardrails, these costs are passed on to families through ever-increasing electric bills, and we all, each of us, bear the terrible cost of high carbon and pollution emissions. So today, it's really my pleasure to introduce by pre-recorded video a true champion, Delegate Josh Thomas, who along with several newly elected delegates, particularly Delegate McAuliffe and Guzman and many others, have been placing guardrails on placing guardrails on data centers a cornerstone. So with that, I'd like to let the video play.
Good afternoon. This is Delegate Josh Thomas from Virginia's 21st House District. I'm so sorry I can't be with you today, but I'm literally in the session right now, getting ready to go on the House floor and start voting on what is going to be a great session over the next, I guess now, 57 days, particularly because of the climate legislation we have. I've got 3 data center bills that I'm sure some of you have already heard about. Let's start with a couple of those real quick, and then I'll let you get back to the great advocacy as you're bringing to the table here in Richmond. First thing would be HB 153. This is a redo of House Bill 1601, which I carried earlier in the 2025 session. It is the first data center reform bill to make it all the way through both chambers, out of the legislature, and onto the governor's desk. Unfortunately, Governor Youngkin vetoed it, but the vetoed version is back. And I have every indication that we will get a much more favorable result from our new governor. What does HB 153 do? And what did House Bill 1601 do? All they do is they make sure that if you're going to have a data center sited in your locality, the locality must look at 2 things, which they're currently not required to do. First one is if it's near residential property, they got to look at sound, because that's a big issue in many communities like mine in Western Prince William County. The other thing they have to look at, which is an issue whether you live near the data center or not, is the impact of the infrastructure, transmission lines, substations, and the distribution network. Things that are tearing up people's land, ruining farmland, battlefields, parks, things that I know all of you and I care about. I'll go over 2 more bills real quick and I'll get out of your hair. HB 154 is a disclosure bill. I'm sure you already are aware, but we have these very large diesel generators at many of our data centers across the Commonwealth. What we don't know is when they're not firing up for their monthly tests, sometimes they have to fire up for a long time because of what's called demand response. The grid is overstressed. Data centers are some of the #1 users of energy, and so we need to get them off the grid. And so PJM, our large regulator, multi-state, will ask them to get off like they did earlier in 2025. And we want to know, when are they doing that? Where are they doing that? Because when they do that, they're putting thousands of particulates into the air, which fall down and are breathed in by you, me, and our children. And we have a right to know about that. Final one is HB 155, ambitious bill. What it seeks to do is, it's really the only bill that's trying to answer the question, what if we just constrain the energy demand instead of having 25 bills on how to make more energy? We should definitely do that. But we need to have bills that talk about constraining the immense amount of demand that data centers are bringing to Virginia. If you didn't know this, as of last year, Virginia imports the most power of any state in America. 39% of our energy is imported. Trust me, look at the chart. We are drastically ahead of all of our peer states. We need to do something about our addiction to energy. How do we do that? Start regulating when data centers can get in line for energy, and doing that at the siting level at the locality, having our state regulator, the SEC, get involved very early in the process so that the state is actually paying attention and giving an opinion when it comes to whether or not to have a data center gain access to the grid. I know that was a lot. I just wanted to give you all a brief thumbnail sketch of what I'm bringing to the table when it comes to data center reform in the 2026 legislative session. I really appreciate all of your advocacy, and I know as all of us together, if you look at the progress we've made in the last 2-3 years, it's immense. It grows exponentially. Our caucus for data center reform here in the House and the Senate is growing. I think now we've got over 20 members, which is outstanding, and due in large part for the advocacy that you will do and demand from your elected officials. So thank you so much for being in this fight with me, and I look forward to seeing you around the General Assembly and the Capitol.
So Sharon, quick question for you. Got about 30 seconds. In light of the massive negative impacts data centers are having on our electrical bills and land use, natural resources, and human health, are there any other categories of bills that we should be watching for?
Yes, Louisa, and I'll try and make this fast. Data centers owned or operated on behalf of Meta, Amazon, big tech are the richest companies in the world, yet they received in 2025 nearly $1.9 billion in tax breaks. Given our budget crisis, we believe these breaks should be eliminated or at least greatly reduced. However, currently Youngkin's budget extends these tax breaks through 2050, no strings attached. Well, we demand strings to be attached. So we're supporting bills by Delegate Rip Sullivan, another stalwart champion, and Senator Creed Deeds that tie any tax breaks to requirements that data centers, one, power their facilities with a significant amount of clean energy, which is cheaper. Two, make their facilities more energy efficient, which saves energy. And three, cuts down the use of serious polluting backup diesel generators. I ask you to join our team. We have a great team. Meredith is here, Meredith Haynes, and I've got Randy Freed on board. Take our one-click calls to action to email legislators asking that they pass these bills. It's the least we can do for everyday Virginians who are paying spiraling cost of electricity bills to support big tech and its infrastructure. Thanks so much, Louisa.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and thanks for your ongoing leadership of this working group. We so appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on to campaign finance reform, and I'd like to introduce Nancy Morgan from Big Money Out Virginia to share with us what bills they're looking at this year. Go ahead, Nancy.
Hey, everybody, and hey, Louisa. Delighted to be here. Well, I think that all of us in this room believe that democracy means our government answers to the people, not to the biggest donors with the deepest pockets. So our group is all volunteer, nonpartisan group working on campaign finance. We've been doing this for 8 years. And most Virginians are really surprised to hear that Virginia has the weakest campaign finance laws in the country. In fact, in 2020, the Coalition for Integrity issued a swamp index, which measured transparency and accountability to voters. And Virginia ranked 46 out of 50. That's not too good. It's one of 5 states that has no limits on campaign contributions. And I think in the 2025 elections, we saw that. Our elections are among the most expensive in the country. Just to let you know, just for the House of Delegates in 2025, a record $100 million was spent. And if you look at VPAP, some candidates raise $2 to $6 million that pays $18,000 a year. At the same time, the statewide races also approach record spending levels. So we have no contribution limits, weak disclosure on dark money, and virtually no enforcement. Basically, nobody is minding the store. So the question before us is simple. After 8 years of advocacy, will 2006 be the year that Virginia finally chooses reform? And I think there's reasons for hope. Some important bills are being introduced this session. For example, there's a disclosure of AI-generated content in election ads. That's Senator Salim. I think given the garbage coming out of Washington, that's an easy lift. Allowing local jurisdictions to implement public financing of elections, that's sponsored by Delegate Simon and Senator Carol Foy. And after 30 years since Governor Wilder's commission first recommended campaign limits, we're going to have campaign finance limits. Danica Rome last year she introduced a ban on corporate funding. This time she's going to focus on banning contributions from public utilities, including Dominion Energy. As we all know, that's the largest donor in our last election. They accounted for $17 million. So restricting big money in politics is not about Republicans or Democrats. It's about whether our democracy is for sale and whether it belongs to the voters. The proposals aren't radical, they're overdue. The real question, and for all of us, is whether legislators will hear loudly enough from citizens around the state. So I'm going to share in the chat a link where you can just send your legislators an email saying we really want action. And as we've been saying this whole hour, reform only happens if you raise your voice. I'll also put a link to some of the good governance legislation which we're currently being introduced. Back to you, Louisa.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. And so I know you have been fighting this fight, and it has been a real challenge over the last 8 years. Why is it so hard for campaign finance bills to get passed here in Virginia?
Good question, Louisa. And it's unlike the federal area where you have all this independent expenditures caused by Citizens United. In Virginia, let's just be real. The reality is there's a lack of political leadership and political will. Incumbents, well, they benefit from the status quo. Yet 80% of Americans, irrespective of party, want money out of politics. But that's only happens when real citizens ask for change. And that's why it's exciting. Next Tuesday, we're going to have our 4th Democracy Day in Richmond. We had over 130 Virginians register. We're going to be down there saying a simple message: Virginia can do better. And I think, the message is when we speak loudly, even the status quo has to listen. So anyway, we hope that you take action. Thanks so much, Louisa.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Appreciate it. Okay, and our last topic, everyone, is public education. And we've got 2 legislators who are joining us via video. We're going to start off with Senator Barbara Favola. So if we can bring that video up.
Good afternoon to the Grassroots Coalition. Thank you for allowing me to join you virtually. I really appreciate your passion and your ability to help influence the important agenda that the Democratic Caucus is going to move forward with in this new session. I'm State Senator Barbara Favola. I do represent most of Arlington County, 95%, and I'm delighted to be sharing some time with you. There are 2 bills that are important. One bill is Senate Bill 90, and that bill actually attempts to allocate dollars, educational dollars, to our public schools that will follow the student. So students who need more resources, like our special education students, our English learners, and some of our students who are educationally at risk because of poverty, we want to provide more dollars to our school divisions to help educate these students. The second bill is Senate Bill 33, and that bill allows flexibility when school divisions receive the at-risk transfer dollars. They may use them to hire a nurse or an advanced practice nurse, so every school will be able to have some healthcare professional on staff to be able to assist when a student has a healthcare issue. I so appreciate your help. My office is, we have an open door policy. I am always available. Please email us or send us a message on my website, and we will get back to you. Thank you, and have a great day.
Fantastic. And then we're going to follow this up with Sam Rasool, Delegate Sam Rasool, who is the chair of the Education Committee in the House, to tell us just a little bit more.
Hello, my friend. Sam Rasool here, chairing the Education Committee. Wanted to give you a good update. We are so excited about being able to have a new governor. It's a new day in public education in Virginia. It's been under attack by this administration for so long, and now we're going to be able to focus on the kids, focus on the teachers, the people who need us most. We're carrying this big bill, HB 92. Senator Favola is carrying the version in the Senate, where we're helping students with disabilities, codifying help for English language learners, at-risk students, and doing a whole host of other things. It is exciting now to be able to focus back on the kids, the students who need us the most. And we are so thankful to all of you who helped us get to 64 strong in the House, and who are going to be up here advocating every step of the way. So thank you, and looking forward to fighting for public education with you.
Amazing. So I just think, what Delegate Rasool shared about it, elections matter, and we now have the opportunity to really get many of these bills that we've been working on for years past. And I'm so excited about that. I think the other thing that's just important to note, especially around public education, is a lot of this does cost money. And so when I mentioned at the beginning of the hour about the importance of supporting new revenue bills, this is going to be critical for us as we think about how do we make sure that the things that are most important for Virginians are getting funded in this upcoming 2-year budget. So I am going to start to wrap us up. I want to note, as you all heard, the speakers clearly made the case that we have a lot of opportunities to make a difference in Virginia this year. And we are calling upon our legislators to pass legislation that serves the interests of all Virginians, not just those with the greatest access or the loudest voice. We will be following up this press conference with a letter to our legislators that outlines all of the priority bills that we hope will be passed this year. The Virginia Grassroots Coalition is committed to supporting our legislators throughout the General Assembly session. But we cannot do this alone, and we do encourage you to get involved. You can watch our bill tracker on the Virginia Grassroots Coalition website and use our easy calls to action to urge legislators to support our priority bills. There are also a number of great lobby days that are being planned in Richmond. We hope you will find time to meet with your legislators in person to share your own stories and priorities. And finally, please help us educate voters on the constitutional amendments that they will have the chance to vote on this year. We want our voters to feel confident in those amendments and excited about the opportunity to really make some critical changes to our Constitution that will create support within the state going forward. So we're very excited about that. It is now close to the top of the hour, so I'm going to turn it back to Carrie to close us out.
Well, Louisa, everyone was just amazed in the chat. They were mentioning how great the videos were and what a great addition that was this year. And it's so great to hear from all the legislators. How many working groups are at the Virginia Grassroots?
It's a good question, Carrie. So we have some more formal working groups. And then we've also got individuals who say, hey, I'm so excited just about this one bill. Can I help track the bill and do some advocacy around the bill this year? We have space for everyone. So we have an overall legislative working group where everybody gets together every 2 weeks to do some strategy. And then we have either these working groups that you heard the leaders from today, or there's some individuals who are also doing some critical work for us as well, especially around those revenue bills that I mentioned. So if you are interested in joining the legislative working group or one of the specific working groups, I'll put my email in and I can help direct you to the right person. But I also encourage our working group leads to put their emails in the chat as well, so people can get in touch with them directly.
They are so dedicated. It's really impressive, Louisa. You guys are doing an amazing job. Again, I just want to mention the tracker. You mentioned that, the bill tracker. It is just such a great resource. Put a bookmark on it right now in your web browser so that you can find it easily this session. It's an incredible way to track legislation here in Virginia. But anyway, great job, Louisa. We will be doing an after chat where we can have some follow-up questions, Louisa. I know there's some things that you wanted to get to with your leaders. But before we move on, I just want to quickly mention a couple things. Next week, we've got a great show. Catherine and Fanal will be back. Yay. And we'll be talking redistricting. We will be talking about Trump's attempt to rig the election and how we will continue to fight. And we'll be doing that with our great bud, Simon Rosenberg, who is amazing, always an amazing guest. We'll also be hearing from some representatives from the Yes campaign, which will be specifically addressing the amendments for redistricting and telling us how we can all be more effective to educate voters in our communities. So before we roll the credits, I just want to make just a little plug here to donate through the Substack and donate through Patreon. We would love to have your support. Continue to subscribe to our Substack, Network Nova live publication, the Friday Power Lunch. You'll always get your wrap-ups, your briefings. Fanal's got a great essay going on that site, and also links to their new Sunday night sessions that they're having. Join us on Blue Sky and, of course, our Facebook group, and we got it all in so we can roll the credits, and we'll see you in the after chat.